Thank you very much. Now, how many of you guys have ever heard of wildlife forensics? A few? Good. Let's see if we can get this to work. I hope it can work.
At the river mouth, the bears catch only the tastiest, most tender salmon, which is exactly what we at John West want. John West endure the worst to bring you the best.
It's a bit of a laugh, but unfortunately, this is kind of the hill that we're going up. Most people think that wildlife forensics have to deal with some kind of strange interaction between people and animals, when in actuality, what we like to think about is how do we do things that can protect animals? How can we, unfortunately, it's very reactive what we do, but how do we stop the people from exploiting animals? I love this photo because you know that rhino's waking up going, holy crap, my feet hurt and I don't know where I am anymore. And this was actually a conservation effort where they moved this rhino into an area where there wasn't going to be as much poaching. And these lengths, which seem extraordinary, are sometimes what we have to go to protect these animals. A perfect example of it is they were moving a rhino in India on the train, and they actually put about 30 soldiers with the rhino to protect it from being poached, and the train was still attacked. That's how valuable what they have is. The horn, which is keratin, is nothing more than your hair or your fingernails, but a processed rhino horn can go for about $1 million. And it used to be used for traditional Chinese medicine, and that was kind of where the big drive for it was. But a few years ago, a Western scientist said that if you grind it up, put it in a pill, and ingest it, it cures cancer. And there was a huge spate of crimes here in the US where people were breaking into zoos, were breaking into museums, personal collections, and tearing these horns off and trying to sell them. So it's not just something that you see in Africa and Asia, you actually see it here in the US as well. It's not looking good. And any of you guys that are conservation-based people, it's bad. My children's children, your children, probably will not see megafauna in the wild the way that we're going right now. You can see here a gang of poachers killed a family of 11 elephants in one day. This came from the 27th of October. 78 elephants have been poisoned in the country this month. It used to be where it would be machine guns, and then it went to rocket-propelled grenades. Now they're filling up watermelons with cyanide. Or they're putting cyanide in water holes, like you can see down here. Problem that you have is elephants aren't the only thing that are drinking out of those watering holes. So you have huge collateral damage when all you're trying to get is the ivory from the elephants. And we're going to talk a fair bit about ivory. But this is what we're fighting against. And it used to be where it was the farmer that if he killed an elephant and harvested its ivory, he could feed his family for 10 years. Now it's ISIS. Boko Haram are actually funding their terrorism through the illegal sale of ivory. If you guys remember in Nairobi, the attack on the Westgate Mall, it was Westgate, wasn't it? Yeah, funded through the sale of ivory. So it's no longer just small scale. This is huge industrial scale removal of wildlife. And a lot of people think, well, it's getting better. It's actually not getting better. You can see here, so this is a little bit dated, but up 50% from 2011, the amount of rhinos being taken. And some of the massive work that's being done, I mean, taking these rhinos and putting them down with a tranquilizer dart and removing their horns. Rhinos need their horns. They manipulate their environment with their horns. So removing it isn't a good solution. And unfortunately, that's the only solution we have right now because people covet this. And they covet it for no other reason other than the fact that they want it. It has intrinsic value. There is no value to ivory. Zero value to ivory. But if you ask somebody, would you like something in ivory? Most people will go, yeah, I really would. I really would like it. And the US government in a few small areas is working really hard against this, but for the most part, they don't care. I'll give you an example, it's not the best example, but I'll give you an example. My father-in-law, who lives in Albany, Western Australia, Albany was the last place where they were whaling, and whaling ended in the 70s. And they used to bring in so many sperm whales that the guys that were flensing the whales would take the teeth of the sperm whales and throw them at the sharks that were eating the blubber and the stuff that was coming off the animals. Well, as it was getting close to ending that whaling station, a friend of his called him up and said, hey, we're going to close in the next couple months. Why don't you come down and get some sperm whale teeth? Sperm whale teeth are one form of ivory. So he went down there and he became a scrimshaw, scrimshawer, and he did really good work. We went down there a few years ago, and as a wedding present, he gave us one of his teeth that he had scrimshawed as a wedding present, and he gave me an unmodified sperm whale tooth. I was really worried coming across the border because technically it's not legal to transport ivory across the border. I had, the director of the federal lab on speed dial ready to call him up if they took it from me at customs. I said at customs, and you that done international travel, you got the red line where you feel shame and the green line where you're hoping they don't stop you. Went through the red line. What do you have to declare? I have ivory in my bag. Go ahead. But I have ivory in my bag. No, go ahead, you're fine. But I essentially said I'm committing a crime, and they're like, go ahead, we don't care. So I talked about that it's funding terrorism. And here's the U.S. International Conservation Caucus Foundation. They're saying that they know for a fact it's funding terrorism. There's also a well-known conservation lawyer that said, if it walks, crawls, or flies, humans will kill it, eat it, and exploit it. And it's true. There's nothing on this planet that we don't exploit. Zero. Some of it we exploit and we manage it. Cows. Like, we got more cows than we know what to do with. But others, we just think that they're always going to be there, and they're not going to. It's not all bad news, though. We are still finding some new things out there. You can see this one, a carnivore, found very recently in the forest of Colombia in Ecuador. It's weird that that beeps when I put the laser on it. I'm going to see if I can mute it. There we go. Another one, you guys may have seen this, the Myanmar snub-nosed monkey. About 4 years ago, there was a photographer, and he was in Myanmar, and he met this couple, and they had this monkey. And the guy had never seen it before. Guy says, I'm going to race back, and I'm going to get my scientist friends, and we're going to come back, and we're going to document it. What do you think they did? They ate it. For them, it's food. It wasn't anything new to them. It was new to Western science. Since then, they have put out some traps, and they have found a small population of it. And the way that they found them is when it rains, you can see their upturned nose. When it rains, they sneeze. So those scientists were thinking, who the hell's in the forest sneezing all the time? And in actuality, it was these monkeys. And that's a large primate that's only recently been discovered. So what do we deal with? Furs, feathers, hides, those types of things. The great white hunter goes over to Africa, kills something, and tries to bring it back. Cecil. You guys remember the big uproar with Cecil. That dentist had all of his permits in order. People were still really pissed off about that, even though he thought he was doing it legally. Ivory poaching. There is only one form of legal ivory, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. Bushmeat. We see a lot of bushmeat trade in Africa, and most people think, well, you're not going to see it here. In actuality, a lot of bushmeat comes into Miami. A lot of bushmeat comes into Miami. You can go online. I do this for my class. I give them an hour. I say, get online and see how much illegal stuff you can find. Don't buy it, but just see what you can find. They found American lion meat. I don't know exactly what an American lion is. They say it's because it's not from Africa anymore, it's from America, so now it's an American lion. But you can buy the meat. It's still illegal. The big one that we see out of South America is the exotic pet trade. Birds being wholesale removed from the rainforest. Traditional Chinese medicine and animal abuse and neglect, we don't deal with that much in the wildlife forensic realm. That's more a niche. University of Florida actually has a new program that deals with neglect and abuse. So how did we get to the point where we're at now? It started initially with state labs. Hunting and fishing license, if anybody hunts or fishes. If you want to go out and throw a line into the sound, you have to spend $10 to get a license for it. And by doing that, you say you're going to only catch certain species of certain size. From there, it went to a federal lab. And to date, the only really working federal lab that only does wildlife crimes is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Forensic Lab out in Ashland, Oregon. It was created by Ken Goddard, and this is Ed Espinoza. He's second in charge out there. It's tiny. I mean, the lab's big, but there's a very few amount of people that are there. And that lab, that working lab, does the exact same stuff that a human forensic lab does, but just with every other species. My colleague that sits in the office next to me does DNA on people, and I say, you are a lazy bastard because you're only working with one species. We got the rest of them. And it's hard. It's hard to do that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. NOAA has a forensic lab. There's one in Charleston, and there's one up in Seattle. This is Kathy Moore and Trey Knott. Kathy is also in charge of our OSAC, and Trey's on the OSAC as well. They are mainly a genetics lab. So they'll bring in a fillet of fish, and they'll say that it's cod, and they want to make sure that it's cod and it's not shark, or it's not swordfish, or it's not Patagonian toothfish, things that are illegal. And the fin trade. Fin trade is massive. 100 million sharks a year are being killed for their fins. For a delicacy called shark fin soup, if anybody's heard of it. They use the cartilage like noodles. Nasty. I know how you process them. If you guys ever want to see how nasty shark fins are, we've got 1,000 of them, and I'm not kidding, we have 1,000 of them down in forensics. And that's from 2 years of collecting. I have everything from great whites down to threshers to you name what. When you process them to get them to that stage, you put some pretty toxic stuff into it. And people eat that crap. There's no value. Eat a noodle. It's the same thing, eat a noodle. So what happened was, for those of you that know about forensics, for those of you that don't, in 2009, the federal government said, there's not enough science in forensic science. We need to create these working groups. The one that we created was the Scientific Working Group for Wildlife Forensics, SWIG-WILD. We had the coolest name. You know, there's Swig Dam and Swig Talks and stuff like that. And you can see some of the members there. We had a very short life. And we had a very short life not because of what we did was wrong, but we got started in 2011, and last year the federal government says, well, we're not going to fund you guys anymore. We're going to create the OSACs, which are the Organization for Scientific Area Committees, which is this, because the federal government makes everything so complicated. So the hierarchy goes from here out. Now, if you notice, here we are over here. We fall under biology and DNA. So everything we do, and we do DNA, we do morphology, we do general stuff. Try to explain to a DNA person how you're going to do morphology to species identify an iguana. To them, an iguana could be an elephant if it's not, a double helix. So we have to explain to people that don't know anything about morphology what morphology is and that we're doing it correctly. So it's an uphill battle within our own group. Now imagine trying to go to somebody who's not well versed in biology and try to explain to them why you can say that because there's 3 extra hairs on this head of this animal, it's a completely different species. So the Scientific Working Group, their last meeting we had here at the university. And after the meeting, we were having a few adult beverages of the frothy kind. And we were talking about research, and they said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we just put what research we need out on the web, and anybody who wants to do anything can come in and do that research. And I said, whoa, hold on, you're going to get a lot of nut jobs trying to do some research that they don't know what they're doing. So I said, because I had been drinking, I'll take that on. And we created the center. So it's the Center for Wildlife Forensic Research here at the university. Now, if you go and Google that, you're not going to find anything because we're so in our infancy. There's three of us. There's myself, there's Dr. Virginia Maxwell, and Dr. Robert Powers. But we already have a publication out. We looked at the morphology of eagle talons for species identification. We're working on a scavenging one. We're doing some really cool work. We just did a case of a parrot that overdosed on cocaine. So we have some fun stuff that we're doing, really in our infancy. So if you have any questions about it, you gotta come and talk to me. So the laws that we work on, and these are really U.S. laws, and one of them is not even a law, and we'll talk about it. The Lacey Act was the original one. The Lacey Act is what said, we're gonna protect our wild areas, and we're gonna protect what's in it. So the government said it's our job to protect certain areas, certain animals, those types of things. And in doing it, they talked about Endangered Species Act. If you want to possess an endangered species in any way, you need a permit from the Endangered Species Act. It's a pain in the butt to get, and you have to renew it every year. Then we have the Migratory Bird Treaty. And what that means is any bird that migrates is protected. So if you're walking along and you find a really gorgeous big feather, pick it up, look at it, and put it down. Because if you pick it up and you put it in your pocket, you're breaking a federal law. Okay? And the reason why you're breaking a federal law is we don't know where you got it. So you could say, oh no, I just found it on the road. We don't know if you shot that bird. So look at it and then put it down. Don't collect it. The Marine Mammal Protection Act, under a different agency of the government, that covers dolphins, whales, polar bears, those types of things. Seals, so on and so forth. And then CITES, which is the Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna. It's not a law, it's really a guide, and we're going to talk more about that. But what most people are involved with are the hunting and fishing laws that I spoke of. The question we often get asked is it a crime? Okay? Sometimes possessing things isn't a crime. Rhino horn. You can't possess a rhino horn without a permit. So if you find somebody with this in their bag, guess what? They're breaking the law. What about this fella here? And this isn't a Photoshop picture. Is it against the law to kill Hogzilla here? It may be, it may not be. This one's actually out of Australia. Carte blanche to kill as many pigs in Australia as you want. They're feral. You can go and you can't shoot them as much because they have pretty strict gun laws. But here in the US, you're going to need to be covered under a hunting permit to do that. How about our little calf friend here? Predation is not against the law. We can't take a wolf to court and say you shouldn't have eaten that. The one thing though is if a wolf did eat this, the federal government is reintroducing wolves in the lower 48. And a wolf takes some of your livestock, you can get reimbursed by the government. Now, what do you think the question will be if you bring up that claim? Did a wolf really kill your calf, or was it your dog? And those are questions that are asked. The other one, luckily I don't have to deal with it, but the feds do. People used to send in hair and say it was Yeti hair or Sasquatch hair. What do you think they did? I'll take that and I'll throw it in the garbage there. Some junior senator from Oregon, I believe it was, thought it would be fun to pass a law that says it's illegal to kill a Sasquatch. So every hair that comes in from Oregon that they say is a Sasquatch needs to be processed. You don't think they have enough things to do? And I hate to break it to you guys, there is no such thing. That would just be our secret, though. How about hitting a whale with a boat? Is it against the law to do that? It could be. Are you in the wrong place? Are you going too fast? Do you think we're going to be able to track back to where that whale got hit? Probably not. So what we do is we give not only retroactive advice, but sometimes they ask us, how can we change the legislation? The shark fin stuff that I'm doing here, it was asked to me by the NOAA group, hey, can we differentiate cheap and cheerfully elasmobranchs, i.e. skates, from other elasmobranchs, i.e. sharks? So if we're seeing that, can we differentiate it very easily? If we can, then they should be protected differently. If we can't, they should all be protected the same. So that's scientific knowledge that we're trying to give to them so that they can change the legislation. Also, we can do it individually. So polar bears are endangered. They're protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. We have a really good knee-jerk reaction as humans. If somebody gets eaten by an animal, what's the first thing we want to do? Kill them, right? Go out there and hunt it down. They're going to want to make sure that they get the right animal that attacked them. You're not going to want to go out and kill 5 or 10 or 20 polar bears and hoping you get the right one. So it may be, well, you know, maybe it was a mother with a cub, or maybe it was a rogue male with a broken tooth that just couldn't hunt for himself. Those are the types of information that we can give. How about shark attacks? That's so visceral to everybody. You know, I could almost guarantee you 95% of the people on this campus, if you said, are you afraid of a shark attack? They'd be like, yeah. I mean, who isn't? Like, it's scary to think about. The questions become, was it a shark attack or was it shark scavenging? Like this one up here, like not doctored at all. This guy does it intentionally. He goes out there and in this little kayak with white pointers. I'm all about animals, but no way. The other, you know, there's a case that came out at Sydney Harbor where a person that wasn't very good and very nice got into it bad with his colleagues. They killed him, chopped him up, threw him into Sydney Harbor. A tiger shark, which is a garbage disposal of the ocean, scooped up the limb, had it in its stomach. They caught the tiger shark, cut it open, and out pops this guy's arm. Tattoo and all, that's how they identified him. Now, nice clean cut. Tiger sharks don't have opposable thumbs and can't work circular saws. So it was a scavenging event. So are you going to, I mean, they killed the shark anyway, but are you going to want to start, you know, putting up, you know, fishing nets to catch them? Western Australia, love it to death out there, but they're in a huge shark cull because they think that, you know, 5 people getting attacked over 5 years is a huge number that they have to start killing great whites and, you know, bull sharks and all the other ones out there. So I already talked about the agencies that are out there. The one that drives this is CITES, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it should be noted that CITES, and we are a signer. The U.S. government is a signer of CITES. So the thing is if something's going on the other side of the world with illegal trade, as signers, we're responsible for that. We, and the federal government looks into that type of thing. CITES says, listen, we understand that people are going to trade, and they're going to trade animal parts. We've been doing it forever. What they're concerned about is overexploitation. Can the natural grouping handle the amount of animals that you're taking out of it? Have any of you guys ever heard of Chatouche? Okay, it's the world's finest wool, and a 2-yard piece of Chatouche can fit through a ring. It's called a ring shawl. And you can pass it through this ring. That's how fine it is. Well, it comes from a Tibetan antelope. Tibetan antelope don't like to get shaved. So you know what they do? They shoot it and kill it. You can shave a dead animal pretty easily. So that's something that it can't be sustained. Okay? So it's really there to stop overexploitation so that these animals can maybe not thrive, but at least not die out. But there's no enforcement arm. To join CITES as a government, guess how much it costs? How much would you think it would cost to join an international organization? Anybody want to hazard a guess? $5,000. $5,000. $55. $55. Now the U.S. government donates about $2 million. The second largest one is Japan. Why do you think Japan donates so much? Whale meat is yummy. They want to not exploit it, but they want to steer how it's moving forward. I want to talk briefly about what the problems that we're having are. What is that? It's a tiger. We can all say it's a tiger, right? It's Panthera tigris. Cats are relatively easy. So we got a leopard, we got a tiger, we got a lion, we got a jaguar. Okay, my 3-year-old son could get these right. Okay, we all know them. What happens if this looks like this? And you're going to go to court and you're going to say, this is the exact same animal as this. What do you think the jury's going to do? You're an idiot. Like, can we get somebody in here who knows what they're talking about? So what we need to do, and what we oftentimes find problem with, is how can we convince the jury or the average public, you know, and this isn't just forensic science, this is biology, that these two are the same, okay? How about this? Anybody know what that is? Western quoll, does that help anybody? Do we have any biologists in here? How about a chuditch? Anybody? Does that help? So Western, this is a...
It's not a tiger.
It's not a tiger. It is not a... This is the largest native carnivore in Western Australia. It's about the size of a small cat. Yeah. But Western quoll is what the white man calls it. The chuditch is what the Aboriginals call it. And this is its scientific name. So if you were to talk to somebody, a traditional Aboriginal person in Western Australia, say the Noongar, and said Western quoll, what the hell are you talking about? They would know a chuditch. So definitions and terminologies are important. What's this? Kangaroo? What's this? Wallaby? Swamp wallaby versus a western gray kangaroo. Western gray kangaroos are like white-tailed deer here in Connecticut. They're everywhere. And people go out and shoot them and you can eat them. They taste awesome. Swamp wallaby, highly endangered. So being able to differentiate those two is going to be important. So taxonomy is the division or the ordered division and naming of organisms. So that when we go to court, we're all talking about the same thing. Is it important? Of course it's important. It says there's about 2 billion museum specimens across the world. Of that, there's about 1.5 million species. And they're saying anywhere about 13,000 new species are being identified every year. Now, they're not the monkeys. You know, they're like tiny little things, or they're subspecies of another one. So the possibility of 50 to 100 million species. That's a lot. I mean, we can't name streets in New Haven without repeating a few times over, right? Imagine trying to do 100 million species. I don't think we have that many words in the English language. Anybody know what that is? Anybody been to Australia? What is that?
It's like a koala.
It's a drop bear. You walk into the trees, it drops down and it chews you up, attacks you. If you ever go to Australia, they're going to tell you that story. It's BS. It's a koala. They don't drop down on you. They don't chew you. Although, what do koalas have? Do you know that's a human disease? Chlamydia. Imagine the first guy to come home and be like, I swear to God, I got it from a koala. The hell were you doing with the koala? Right? So, I'm sure from high school biology, we all remember this, okay? So, it's important that we make it also not only very informative, but make sense. So, what the hell is that? How about this? Anyone? Does that help? For a botanist, it would. It's a tomato. Okay? So sometimes it makes sense morphologically. Proboscidea, a proboscis, a long projection of the face. Or Mephitis, that's my favorite one. Foul smelling, a skunk. The describing scientist. Okay? Or how about agoraphobia? Makes no sense. How about this one? And this is actually a real one. This is biologists having too much to drink and messing with the system, right? So what do we deal with? And how do we define it? It's amazing to think that we all talk about these things, and if you ask somebody to define a mammal, So, mammal has teeth, has hair or fur. What's the difference between hair and fur? Anyone has a guess? Nothing. Same exact thing. So why do we have two different names? Just to make life difficult, right? Warm-blooded, single jawbone in adulthood, inner ear bones, they produce milk, and relatively large brains for their size. How about fish? We could all say what a fish is, but most people, if you ask them to define it, would have trouble with it, okay? Amphibians, 2 lives, okay? And because they lack any skin covering, amphibians are great ones for indicators of what's going on in the environment. Pollutants get into them like crazy. And birds, okay? And the one defining characteristic, the nice thing about birds is they have one defining characteristic. All the rest of them have ones that they share with everything else. What would the one defining characteristic of a bird be? Feathers, yeah. Nothing else has feathers. Mammals fly, mammals lay eggs, mammals have bills, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and reptiles. I love that photo. You know that's way back in the day when you let your kids play with a massive alligator. But each one of these will be exploited, and exploited for different things. You know, a tortoise. There's a tortoise shell out there that has high value. Or have ever you guys heard of horn-rimmed glasses? It used to be made by sea turtle shells. Still is in a lot of places. Okay, so we need to talk about what things we're going to protect. So species. Definition of a species is a group of organisms capable of interbreeding. That's the most definite or easiest term. I was just having an OSAT call about a month ago, and we're talking about species. And one of them actually said, I can't define it, but I know what it is when I see it or we talk about it. Does anybody else know what this definition's for? Pornography. There you go. Pornography. So we group species and pornography with the same definition. And you would think that that first one would be good enough. I like to add on capable of interbreeding and producing viable offspring. You know, you can do a tiger and a lion and get a liger, but it's sterile and so on and so forth. The problem that arises is, you know, and for those of you guys that are scientists, you know, the first person to describe it, they find it, they describe it, here it is, I'm going to call it something. Is it right? Homo floresiensis. Do you guys remember this? This was big news, what, 5-6 years ago? The Hobbit Man. It's a new species. It's a recognized species. What's the problem with it? We don't know if it's a species. People are really good at being scared of things they don't know and getting rid of them. You guys remember leprosy? Or you don't remember, you know about leprosy? What do we do with lepers? Put them in colonies. Out on Molokai. Sign me up. I'll go out and hang out in Hawaii on a leper colony, right? But the problem is were these tiny people maybe part of a bigger group that they were afraid of and they didn't want anything to do with them? Bad juju? Put them on an island? You don't know. So for us, naming a new species off of one or two can be difficult. And all this was done before Darwin. So evolution needs to be taken into account. How are things changing? Is it truly gone far enough that we should call them different species? You know, and Darwin and Wallace were perfect at it. How many of you guys know who Charles Darwin is? How many of you guys know who Wallace is? One? Yeah. I mean, Wallace was the one that went, oh, natural selection. And what did Darwin do? Oh, I better get that out there. Darwin, everybody knows Darwin. I named my son after Darwin. Wallace gets a little line in the South Pacific, you know? But the thing is it's important. We need to think about this type of evolutionary stuff. So I want to kind of take what's bad or what's problematic for us and talk about some of the things that we do. Ivory. When you say ivory, most people will say an elephant tusk. And do you guys remember about a year ago, the federal government made a big deal about destroying a bunch of ivory. They bought out the grinder, right? Here it is in powder form. You guys don't remember this? It's massive news. All they did was they took African elephant tusks and they threw them through a grinder. That's one form of ivory. It was good that they did that. Have you guys seen where, like in Kenya, where they'll put a big mound of ivory and they'll pour gasoline on it and they'll throw a torch on it and all the reporters are there taking photographs? You guys have seen that, right? You know what happens after that? Reporters get bored, they leave, spray it down with water, wipe off the black soot, sell it to China. And China has 7 ivory carving factories. And they're CITES members, and they say, oh, no, it's from our country. Last time I checked, China doesn't have any elephants, especially African elephants, that are native to it. So, all a tusk is a tooth that exposes past the lip. And all ivory is a tooth or tusk that's big enough to be scrimshawed, etched, or carved for commercial value. That's all ivory is. So the different ivory producing taxes. So we got our little warthog here, we got Proboscidea. We'll go through some of these here. Proboscidea, the elephants. It is illegal to possess African or Asian elephant tusks and ivory. No, I shouldn't say that. It's legal to possess it, it's illegal to sell it. The only legal form of ivory to sell or go across international borders is mammoth or mastodon ivory. And if you guys ever read National Geographic, a set like this is $250 million. That big. We're talking 250 million bucks these things can go for. Most of them go for about $1 million, okay? And the reason why it's legal is because modern man, Homo sapiens sapiens, did not cause the demise of the animals. You know, they died out 10, 15,000 years ago, so we didn't do it, so therefore it's legal. Some of the things that you can see with elephant ivory, this is a ball, it's about yay big, and it has 8 free spinning balls carved inside of it. How many hundreds of man hours do you think it would have taken to do this? I mean, little tools that look like L's just scraping it out of there. And they're free spinning inside of it. The question becomes, is it elephant ivory or Proboscidea ivory? And if it's Proboscidea ivory, is it legal or illegal? Outside of a few very rare cases, Schrager lines, which are these little lines here, are only found in elephant ivory. So if you find Schrager lines, you know that it's elephant ivory. Now, is it extant or extinct? The way that these come across is how, or the degree at which they do, is going to give you an indicator if it's mammoth or mastodon or extant varieties. You see a lot of mammoth ivory. There's a fair bit of it. And the reason why you see a lot of mammoth ivory is because they were an Arctic species, so when they died, they fell in the permafrost and they froze over. Mammoth ivory, you don't see a lot of because they were tropical or more tropical, so when they died, they fell into the water and they rotted. And ivory is biological material, so it will rot. It will eventually disintegrate if it's not preserved. Anybody know what the word mammoth means? Nipple teeth. That's a good one for, when you're at the bar. That's a pickup line. You know what mammoth teeth are? Or what mammoth means? So here's the overlap. It's very small. So this is a highly diagnostic feature. The problem that you have with it is if you don't have a clean surface to find these, you're going to have to cut some ivory. If you spent $250,000 on a bit of mammoth ivory, and it turns out to be legal and somebody cut your mammoth ivory in half, you can be pretty pissed off, aren't you? What do you think law enforcement tends to do? Go ahead. we're not going to cut that. Just go ahead. We're pretty sure it's okay. It's a problem. Walrus ivory. You see a fair bit of it coming out of Alaska and Canada. You can tell it by this secondary dentin. When you cut it in half, it looks like oatmeal. It's a very good indicator. If you see that, you're pretty sure that it's walrus ivory. The other thing is walrus ivory is really carved for, Inuit type of stuff. You don't see a lot of it in weird, funky other carvings. So here's some walrus ivory. Does anybody see an issue with this? It's fake. They're all fake. Why are they fake? Look, they all have the same exact cracks. See that? Big money in fake ivory. How about these? For sure fake. I mean, easily fake. You cut that in half. Look at somebody actually spent some time to try and make it look real. Problem is when this resin sets, it actually bubbles come up, and you can, if we had a better view, you can see some of the bubbling coming up. Our bodies don't really produce bubbles that are stable. Here's a sperm whale tooth. Sperm whale tooth, you've got this dark transition ring, so you have to cut it and look at it. Okay, again, fakes. Look at these marks across here. Also, what it's cored out, nothing we have is that uniform. Narwhal. Narwhal's a big one, and if you guys don't know what a narwhal is, it's a whale with a big tusk sticking out of its head. They twist, okay? And this twisting of this narwhal tusk can be seen in the cross section, okay? And you can see kind of the twisting here. Very rare. You don't see it much coming out of Canada. Although, if you want, you can go online and people will say they will ship it across the border to you, and it's $1,000 a foot. Is it real? Who knows? And if it's not, are you really going to file a complaint? I was buying something illegally and they ripped me off. Okay, Artiodactyla, so we got hippos and warthogs. With hippos, hippo have teeth, each set of their teeth are going to be ivory. And the way we look at it is really at the shape, the overall shape, and this angular tusked interstitial zone here. You can see it here, okay? The incisor is very round, upper canine, it's got this V shape like that. And finally, warthog. Warthog has this unique figure 8 shape to it. See here. Now, what's the issue with this? Issue becomes if it's highly carved. And you have this really ornate carving, and you say, hey, guess what? I'm going to cut it in half. What if you're wrong? It's a problem. So, some of the stats, and I'm just going to, I don't know how we're doing on time. I think we're doing all right. Oh, we're getting there. I want to give you guys a few stats, and then we'll stop, and you guys can ask questions if you want. This was a few years ago. 2/3 of all illegal trade in wildlife products was done here in the U.S. And again, people covet it for no apparent reason other than they just want it. They were saying that $450,000 in U.S. sales. Very low number. In 2007, the biggest supplier of illegal materials, eBay, said, you know what, we're done. We're not going to supply any more illegal material. 1 year later, 83% of all the ivory for sale was still on eBay. How did they get around it? Historic, pre-ban. Bull. It's not. So in 1 week in 2007, so this is going back a bit, 2,275 pieces of ivory were for sale. We're not winning. We're losing the battle badly. There's a few other websites out there that track these types of things, or groups that track these types of things. But it's prolific. It's amazing how much material's out there. Like I said, with my wildlife class, I give them 1 hour to get online in class and to see how many things they can find. It's amazing. There was one group found a baby elephant in Dubai, $10,000, and they'll ship it here. It's fine, they'll get it through customs. Another one is think it was called buyatiger.com. It's a female tiger, so it doesn't hurt the population. They've been hand raised, and to gild the lily, they're going to give you an ivory collar. And so that you can take care of your tiger, they're going to give you a pamphlet. So that's what you need, is a pamphlet to raise a tiger. And to show you how sad things really are, there are more tigers in Texas than there are in the wild. They estimate that there's probably 100 tigers in New York City in apartments. More tigers in Texas than there are in the wild. So one estimate was 20 billion US dollars, second only to drugs. We've modified this a bit. We're up to 53, 54 billion dollars a year in illegal trade. Billion, second only to guns and drugs, and we're tied with guns. And who thinks about it? Nobody thinks about it. There's no great ire out there about this. You can see it comes from illegal timber. This is 4 billion. Illegal, undersized, and underreported fishing, 17 billion. And then the traditional group there. It's bad news. And most people don't think about timber as being illegal. Gibson guitars. They brought in a shipment of 300 guitars that were all valued at about $5-6 grand. They were to be sold for more than that. Illegal timber. They went in the furnace. Bye-bye. So where can you go for more information? The Society for Wildlife Forensic Sciences, we're very tiny. We've got, I think we're up to 150, 160 members. A lot of them are student members. There's not very many of us doing this work. The OSAC committee, SWGWILD, which is gone, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Forensic Lab, that's a really cool website. They've got a bird feather identification guide that you can go on there. They put up pictures, I think, every week, and you can guess what it is. You don't get anything for it, but you can guess. There's NOAA, and some of the NGOs that are out there, Traffic, the Trace Network. If any of you guys are interested in donating, please don't donate to WHO, or what is it? No, Wildlife, the one with the panda. WWF. They spend all their money on their executives. There's a lot more better people out there to donate the money to. Do you guys have any questions? It's kind of a dreary talk, but unfortunately it's kind of a dreary subject in the fact that until you guys do something, your children aren't going to see anything. Yeah?
Where in the world did it ever originate that some of these things, if you powder them or whatever, they became medicinal? It's very clear they had no medicinal properties, so, somebody has this disease, they took this or that, it's nothing more than a placebo, and then how does that get perpetuated? There's nothing to it.
It's a great question. I don't know. The way that I look at it is, I don't understand, if you take this pill, it's going to make your wang better, or your, sexual life better, or your, this, that, or the other. The people that are dying of cancer, I kind of understand that. Like, if it's the last ditch hope, even if it said it's not going to work, the big problem, and when you're talking about that, the big problem is the traditional Chinese medicine stuff, and we're not going to change it, and people talk about how great China's doing with the pandas, and, yay pandas, and they're saving them on all this. They're exploiting all their other bears. As soon as their bears are gone, those pandas are gone. Probably in 2-3 years, those pandas will be gone. One or two people may have gotten better after they took a pill, and it's just gone from there. But a lot of it has to do with take tiger bones and you'll get rich. I don't know. It's still there.
And then, all this business with all the ivory that was destroyed, doesn't that just increase the price of the rest of the ivory that's available? And
Yes.
And the same thing. It would seem to me that a real good way to get around this is flood the market with every fake you can.
They tried that. They had a huge surplus in Eastern Africa, and they thought they'd flood the market, and China and Japan got together and made it so that they were going to be the only ones that bid, and they underbid the price. And then the market was flooded with cheap ivory, and everybody wanted ivory, so the prices went skyrocketing. They tried it, it didn't work. Yeah, the only thing that's going to save it is a fundamental shift in the way that we look at the natural world, and it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, it's a sad sight, but megafauna is gone. Yeah?
How are the terrorist groups getting their hands on this money?
From the ivory trade?
Yeah.
They go in mass, usually across a border, like they'll go from Chad into Sudan, rocket-propelled grenades, cyanide, whatever it is, and if they go in mass, a poacher or two or three rangers or wardens, they're not going to go up against them, so they kill them, cut off the horns, go straight to the Somali coast, and sell it to a trader that will take it to mainland China. And who's going to stop them? You know, the Kenyan authorities, Nairobi, they have a shoot to kill. They have a shoot to kill on poachers. People are still doing it. You know, if the thought of them being shot and killed for doing this is not stopping them, what's our next step? Did you?
First of all, I wanted to thank you for your talk. I think you're
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very, very good in the way you present things. But what I'd like to ask you about is that group that you formed here at the University of New Haven.
Yeah.
Do you have like a publication that you put out, or are you just doing research?
We're working on it. Right now, it's just me. I have three. Dr. Maxwell is my assistant director, but she's got a few other things that she's doing, and Dr. Powers is our chief scientist, and he's got other things. So I'm working on it. I'm trying to get the website up and running. I'm trying to do other things, and I'm slowly recruiting student help for the bits and the bobs of it. I'm getting there. I hope to get that out soon. Hope, fingers crossed, knock on wood.
So would that be something like that you would have undergraduate or graduate students do research?
Yep. Yeah, I have, right now, I think I've got about 5 undergrads and 1 grad doing research in it. Unfortunately, because the federal government won't even fund their stuff, I'm doing it on the beg, borrow, plead, steal, do what I can, ask for the kindness of strangers to get the work done. So it's difficult in the fact that I've got a laundry list of students that want to come and do work with me, but the hardest aspect of it is getting the materials. You know, it took the girls my 2 students that started the shark fin stuff, they worked for almost a year before we got our first fin. And then the floodgates opened like crazy. So now we've got tons of them. But it's hard to keep a student engaged when they have to wait a year before they can touch any of the material. I've got a very small collection down in forensics. I had a bigger one when I was at Oklahoma, where I came from before, but they kept that collection. It's tough. It's a tough road to hoe. Any other questions? I'll answer anything. No?
Do you
Yeah.
know anything about the tiger claws that they sell in China?
Yeah, most of them are fake. Most of the vast majority of the tiger material that's sold is fake, which is a good thing, but also a bad thing because it creates a desire. Most of the tiger claws are going to be eagle talons or raptor talons. There's also a cottage industry of making fake tiger penises. If a tiger penis is very short and broad. Most people don't know that. So there's an industry that creates tiger penises from horse penises and sometimes dog penises. And a tiger penis is barbed, and it's thought to help the female ovulate. But the barbs are tiny; they're almost microscopic. But these people take fresh horse penises, they hang them upside down, and they cut little V's in them. And the V's, as it dries, they curl over, and they go, "Hey, you know, tiger penises are barbed. Look at the barbs on this guy." And you look at it and go, "Holy crap, if I were a girl, I wouldn't get anywhere near that." But most of the people that are buying that type of stuff go, "Oh, a tiger penis, I'm going to get that, and I'm going to, grind it up." So it's problematic in the fact that not only do we have the industry that's like just wholesale removing everything from the natural environment, we've got another group that's supplying the fake stuff for them as well. So, you know, a tiger's a tough one in the fact that almost every part of a tiger somebody wants something of, except the meat. But, you know, somebody wants the pelt, somebody wants the penis, somebody wants the bones to grind it up, somebody wants the claws, somebody wants this, that, and the other. And it's, like I said, tigers take a long time to breed and to bring the population back. Same thing with an elephant. You know, it kills. There's an area in Gabon it's a natural park that's about the size of Belgium, and they estimate between 50 and 100 elephants are being killed every day. And it takes 18 months for an elephant to get pregnant and give birth. 18 months, about that? I think. I want to say about 18 months. Yeah.
You said that most of the tigers in the world, there are more tigers in Texas.
Yep.
Are they like in preserves or just it's individual?
Privately owned. You can have a tiger in Texas without a permit. And a lot of them, here's the other thing. There's a lot of stuff out there that's saying, send us your old tigers and we're going to give you, we're going to put them in a reserve and they're going to retire and they're going to live out their life. They go to the reserve, some rich guy drinks scotch, smokes cigars, and the ranch hand goes out there, takes a gun, tiger's in a cage, shoots it, here's your pelt, here's your head, keep drinking. A lot of that happens. The other stuff is what doesn't happen or isn't seen a lot behind the scenes is, you guys know who Bob Barker is, right? Price is Right. When I was in Toronto doing my postdoc, I got to know the Toronto Metro Zoo folks pretty well. Bob Barker put up a huge stink about the elephants there. They had a few elephants die and they had 2 of them left, and they had a reserve down in Florida that they were going to send them to. And Bob Barker said, no, you can't do that. I'm going to rent one of those jumbo C-130 planes and we're going to fly up here. We're going to put them on there. We're going to fly them to California and they're going to live the best life ever. Never eventuated. They rolled up with a couple of semis. One of the semis broke down. The elephant spent like 68 hours in a semi-trailer, broke down in Oklahoma or something like that, and then a year later the thing dies. So all these ideas of we need to save these things, and I'm hoping it's under the best intentions. A lot, like, what the hell does Bob Barker know about keeping an elephant? Talk to the people that know. And I don't know how to keep an elephant, but we sure as hell can find somebody that could tell you how to do it. Yeah.
Do you have like any ideas of like ways to make like the ivory less valuable to people, or is it just like it is what it is?
Here's the thing. They've been thinking a lot of these things. Is there a way that we can feed it something that turns the ivory green? Or there's a jungle elephant that the ivory's slightly pink and that gets twice the amount of money. It's a great question. I don't know. To me, it has so much beauty attached to the animal. Removing it from the animal serves no purpose. But people covet it. Like crazy, they covet it. If it had value and you could say, well, I was using it for a tool and we came up with a better, material to make the tool out of, I would say, yeah, why the hell are we doing this? But when it has no value other than that people want it, how do you tell them not to do that? I wish I knew the answer.
No, but I think what you're saying is like paint it or something like that so that you can't possibly harvest it, because now it's, pink or purple or yellow or something.
Here's the thing, though. You do that, and there's going to be a market created for the purple ivory. Oh, look at what we're doing to the scientists. Screw them! Well, now we're going to sell the purple ivory for twice as much. And like I was saying, the threat of being shot and killed is not stopping these people. What's the next step? We're going to shoot and kill your family? We're hopefully civilized people. We're not going to do that. Are we going to throw them in jail? You're going to get 10 shipments through, making you $20 million before you get caught, and you're going to get caught and get a $10,000 fine. Why the hell wouldn't you do it? You're not going to spend any time in jail.
It's the demand more than anything. I mean, anytime you have a demand for anything, somebody's
Yep. Exactly.
I agree. If De Beers released all their diamonds that they had, diamonds would almost be worthless.
Yeah. Exactly.
And those Leviton, the brown ones, in the 70s and 80s, nobody wanted to even
Mm.
touch those. They were garbage, and now they're selling it, and everybody, oh, chocolate diamonds. This is
Yeah,
impressive.
right.
And
Yeah.
you create a demand, you create a market for it, and people want that status.
Yep.
So things that are hard to get, they really want. It's a status of wealth.
Mm.
I've eaten shark fin soup when I've gone to China because they try to impress you, so the
Yep.
hostess give you the most impressive of the things that are not available readily. I've gotten reindeer horns as gifts. They're supposed to be an aphrodisiac.
Oh, yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So, like I said, if it walks, crawls, flies, we're going to eat it, kill it, exploit it. Yeah, until that demand's gone. And I don't see that changing. Any other questions? Now you guys need to go and do something cheerful. Thanks for coming, guys.